If you're a Washington State employee, you're probably wondering, will my pension be enough? What about healthcare costs, inflation? There's a lot of different risks that you face going into your retirement. And in 2025, things may seem more uncertain than ever. So today I'm going to walk you through 5 critical retirement risks that you absolutely must prepare for. And I'll give you the tools you need to know about to protect your future. Let's dive right in. So whether you're a PERS, TERS, SERS, or LEOFF member, you're trying to make your savings last. And understanding these risks we're about to go over can make or break your retirement strategy. So risk number 1 is going to be longevity risk. I say this is number 1 risk because this is probably the one that most people overlook or don't take into account enough. Longevity risk is what happens if you just keep living a long, healthy life. According to Social Security, a 65-year-old man today can expect to live to 84 and a woman to 87, and 1 in 3 will go past 90. So if you're retiring in your early 60s, you've got 25 to 30 years that your savings need to last. And there's a lot of people that come to us and say, hey, I want to die with nothing. And if you don't know when you're going to pass away, that's really hard to do because you spend up too much. Your last few years, you're going to have nothing left, and it's not going to be the best years of your life. So it's best, live within your means, but don't try to break the bank too early. And also don't be so conservative that you're left with the mattress stuff full of money, right? So this all boils down to many retirees just underestimate how long they're going to live. Now, pension plans will provide you for income for life, but it's important you need to supplement that with your personal savings. So while having those guaranteed pension payments are nice, you want to make sure that your outside savings, anything that you want to use to support it, isn't going to go away and can actually stand the test of time. So I've seen this in quite a few different ways over the years, but a recent example is, let's say you retire, someone on plan 3, you've got $300,000 saved, and you're going to take about $30,000 per year out because you just need that money to survive on. You're going on vacations, you're buying things, you're having fun. So you just start taking $30,000 out per year. But fast forward, 8, 9, 10 years, you're going to be close to having nothing left, even if markets are really good, because you're taking too high a percentage or too big of a draw early on in your retirement needs. We say people can take the rule of 4% or 5%. They're just going to take 4 or 5% of their total value. In this person's case, they're taking 10%. So you're going to drain down pretty quickly. If you ever get log onto plan 3, sometimes they have this slider thing where they'll say, hey, your expected retirement monthly income is X, and they throw it out there. And this is on the plan 3 side. They're assuming you're going to spend a certain percentage of your portfolio. And often as you look at it, it's much higher than 5%. It's like 6, 7, 8%. And if you just took what they put on their website as fact and drew off of that, you'd probably run out of money. So remember that just because it says so on the internet or when you log into plan 3 doesn't mean there's actually any kind of fact or thing behind it. They're just using a blanket number to show you what could be possible. Doesn't mean it's going to last forever. It's guaranteed. So you always want to consult somebody before you pull the trigger, start taking money out of your retirement accounts to make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot by taking too much out too early. One of the best tools that you guys have available is something like the TAP annuity. So annuities, that's the easiest way to get rid of or eliminate longevity risk. Annuities pay you for life. It's an income stream for life. It's no different than Social Security or your pension. So it's really important that when you're looking at, do I want to take this money and keep investing in myself because I think I might be able to earn more in the markets versus purchasing annuity and getting that guaranteed income stream will reduce so much stress and risk, gets rid of the longevity risk, gets rid of market volatility risk. So there's a lot of things that it helps solve. And oftentimes when I run comparisons, so someone that just takes all their plan 3 money and invests it, and then we do a small withdrawal versus those that buy the TAP annuity and then invest the rest, 9 out of 10 times the person that buys the TAP annuity will have more money at the end of their lifetime than the person that kept it all and said no to the annuity. Because that annuity is able to spit out guaranteed income that also increases every single year at 3% with the TAP annuity, it's going to give you more and more income, which allows any leftover money you have to take on more risk. Right? If my baseline income is high enough that I don't have to worry about the down markets anymore, I can afford to still be in Apple or riskier stocks out there, which we know the long term can provide us with a lot of gains, but in the short term, they're risky. They can go up and down. But if I don't need the income from those stocks anymore, I can withstand the roller coaster ride and we'll kind of wait it out and really see the value in the stock appreciation over the long run. Whereas if I don't have that income set up, I have to have a more conservative portfolio. I need to have money in cash and bonds and not as riskier things, so they're not going to perform as well. And over time, people with TAP annuity with savings will have more money than people that didn't use the TAP annuity at all. This is assuming, of course, you need income, right? So when you're dealing with the longevity risk, it's best to plan for 30 plus years. I often run my plans to age 100 or above, just because I want to make sure that if you're one of those 1 in 100 people that live that long, you want to make sure that the money or the portfolio is still going to be there to provide for you. Risk number 2 is just market volatility, so investment risk, right? So go back to the big drawdown we have, not the one we're seeing in 2025, but go back to 2022. The market, or the S&P 500, fell by about 19%. Fidelity said that the 401ks that they manage, and they're one of the largest 401k providers, the average account dropped by 25%. So remember that when we have losses hurt more than the gains. So for example, if you had $100,000 and it fell by 20%, now only have $80,000. In order for you to get back up to $100,000, the market has to go up by 25%. So you need to have more gains to offset losses. So it's a lot harder to get your money back when you take these losses, especially when you're getting close to retirement, you're in retirement, you really don't have a lot of time to recover from them. So for people on Plan 3, remember that you are 100% responsible for making your own investment decisions. It doesn't matter if you're in the default, target fund at Voya, you are still responsible for that. Nobody at Voya is going to tell you what to invest in or when to make changes. So people that just go with target fund, they go through their whole career and never really do much with their investment, they might have some money at the end, but they may not have as much as they possibly could have, because with those target funds, when they're young, they have you a good chunk sitting in bonds. You don't need bonds when you're in your 30s or 40s because you still got a long time. So you're missing out on the growth of the stock market in your early years, and that compounding effect can add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is why target funds are all the time getting sued, because it's the industry's blanket solution to people that just get defaulted or don't want to make the investment choices. And then they find out that they lost, 6 figures because it wasn't being invested the way it should have been. Now, for people close to retirement, it's kind of the same deal. Those target funds don't know you or your situation or how much you need, and you might find it out that you might have more risk than you thought you would have. Right back in 2020, the 2020 target fund still lost 15% within that first month. So people that are in retirement saying that, it's safe to lose 15% in March if you're planning to retire in June, that's a big hit. So it's important to take your investment seriously. Understand that you are in charge of it and you need to be the one making the moves. Now, if you don't know much about the market, don't know what to choose, and that's kind of why you're the target date market, we built a solution for you. It's Scenic Plan Confidence. We have about 10 different investment models tailored directly to deferred compensation and Plan 3, and we tell you exactly what to buy and what to sell and when to do it. There's an app, as well as you get email notifications when the portfolio recommendations are done. 5 of those models are what we call strategic, so every quarter, January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, October 1st, you get an email and it makes the changes. The other 5 are what we call semi-tactical, so we track the market indicators, and when 2 of the 3 things we're tracking start flashing red at us for a period of 3 days, then we're going to tell you to shift the cash. So it's a little more hands-on. You don't get those emails every single month. You could be in the same allocation for 6-7 months, or you could be told to change your allocation within 2 days. So it all depends on how the markets fluctuate. So in 2025, our semi-tactical models have raised cash at least 3 or 4 times now with the different tariff announcements and stuff. So people are constantly building up cash and then deploying it and building it up. So it's a little more hands-on if you want to go that route. But if you're trying to build wealth, having some kind of service like this to help make decisions easier, or just keep you accountable, or at the very least remind you that, hey, it's something I should be looking at, can definitely help. So I'll link that in the description below if you guys want to look into it more. Right? So the best way to address risk number 2 here, the market risk, is just staying on top of your investments, making sure you're diversified, that you're not just defaulting to those target funds and crossing your fingers hoping all are going to be okay. So it's having someone or knowing what to be invested in at what time and what's appropriate for you based on your timeline. Risk number 3, it's going to be healthcare costs. This is one that comes up all the time. A lot of people think this is the biggest risk in retirement, and it is a very big one, not the biggest. I still think longevity is the biggest one, because with longevity, that's what triggers the healthcare costs, right? The longer you live, the more likely you are to see your health decline. So it kind of triggers, they could kind of go hand in hand in a way. Anyways, healthcare costs. Fidelity 2023 survey found that the average 65-year-old couple will spend about $315,000 to cover healthcare in retirement. Ouch. So that one there is something that a lot of people sort of underestimate, in the sense they think Medicare is either free or it covers everything, and Medicare does help, but it does not cover everything. Dental, vision, long-term care, prescriptions, things like that, not really covered. Washington State, for a lot of people, will have access to the PEBB program. PEBB is the Public Employees Benefit Board. It's insurance that you can get on before 65, just like when you're working. It's a similar thing. It'll cover your expenses or cover your medical insurance. And then after you turn 65, you get on Medicare. PEBB becomes the second to pay. So Medicare pays first. PEBB picks up the bill, anything left over. My clients have been on PEBB for 10, 11 years now. While it is more expensive than other things you have out there, the coverage that they offer is unparalleled. I've had clients with hip replacements, knee surgeries, broken feet, all kind of things, and they've covered everything. Very little out of pocket, right? So the premiums you gotta pay for, that kind of hurt, but when it comes time to pay out of pocket, they don't mess around with it, and they're very good about covering of people's bills. Now, of course, PEBB isn't just one thing. They have 3 or 4 different insurance companies with 5 or 6 different options, so you still have to do your research to pick which one you want. The UMP Blue Shield, the Regents Blue Shield plan, that's the one that 95% of my clients are on, and that's the one that tends to pay the best. Also probably the more expensive one, but you get what you pay for. Now, when people come in, a lot of times they will leave out their PEBB premium out of their retirement budget. So they say, hey, we need $10,000 per month, but they forget that they need $1,500 a month just to cover their medical expenses until they're 65. So if you're doing that, you're budgeting, making sure you have healthcare factored in. And it is a lot higher than it is when you're working on this with the SEB or the PEBB healthcare, through your employer. Once your employer stops paying it, you got to foot the whole bill. The cost can go up quite a bit. Now, when it comes to the long-term care expenses, this is the one that really gets people. A lot of people think that they don't need it, that they won't live that long. I've heard it all. Some people are convinced that their kid or their spouse will take care of them. And the true factor is, as we get older and your own health starts to deteriorate, you always can't be there for you, right? So remember that long-term care comes in phases. It's not just one day you're healthy, next day you got Alzheimer's. It's a slow deterioration. And sometimes you just might need help with, driving. So like your eyes aren't good anymore, you need someone to drive. That's transportation. That's one of the trigger points for long-term care policy, is being able to transport yourself. And then it's feeding yourself. Some people, as they get older, forget to eat. They don't feel that motivation to cook as much. So there's things like that will slowly go downhill. And the cost for long-term care will vary depending on how much of those needs that you want, right? So for people that think they're going to be able to take care of their spouse, to a degree, maybe, but are you going to be able to pick them up off the floor if they fall, carry them in and out of the car, help them get in and out of the bathtub and stuff like that? Maybe when you're 40 or 50, you could do that. But 70, 80, it gets a lot tougher. I watched my grandparents go through this recently, and it ain't easy, and they're in their 80s. So while it is a good thought, it isn't always the best solution. So you need to have some type of plan to get to that type of care. Washington State, as of right now, average cost for a long-term care facility is about $10,000 per month, about $120,000 per year. Most people go in, it's like anywhere from 2 to 3 years. So it's still north of $250,000, $300,000 right there. And for those people that want to risk it, I'll just take it from my savings account or take it from my retirement account. You could do that, but you're probably looking at a big tax bill. That's money that couldn't go to your kids or grandkids. It's all going to the nursing home costs. So there's ways to protect it, right? So that's where long-term care insurance comes into play. And for a fraction of that, you can just buy the policy up front, know that if something happens, the insurance company's going to foot the bill, not me. I already paid my premium, which is a fraction of what the total bill is. And if I don't use it, oftentimes there's a death benefit attached to it. So like life insurance, I didn't use the policy, you essentially get your money back plus a little bit extra, all tax-free. So having the proper long-term care plan or policy in place can really make or break how long your money lasts in retirement and what your kids, grandkids, or legacy leave behind. The other thing with dealing with long-term care is also about protecting your dignity. While we want our kids, or we say, hey, the kid will take care of me, you think about it, do you really want your kid being the one that has to get up at 3 a.m. to help you to the bathroom and then clean you off after? And it's probably not. I know I wouldn't want that my daughter's doing any of that to me. They have professionals to do that for a reason. And while family is the cheap option, this stuff goes a lot deeper than just money. The physical, mental toll that takes on the family as a whole is a really big burden. And it's something that needs to be taken into account, or at least taken more seriously than just looking at, I'm going to save $10,000 because I'll have my daughter do it all. If they're working and have kids, do you really expect them to give up their whole life just to take care of you for the next 8-10 years and watch you slowly decline in health, not take vacations or days off, go out with friends? And that's really unrealistic. So if your plan is to have, kids take care of us, you might want to pump the brakes and think about that a little bit harder and really look and ask them if that's what they want or if they're willing to do. Because you might be surprised that there's a lot of family that says my kids will take care of me. When it comes time to it, they may not be there or be the best care providers that you would expect or would want. So that's a sticky subject, but something that needs to be taken into account and looked at a lot more seriously than what most people factor in. All right, so solutions for all this. For healthcare, one of the best solutions that I've been doing recently for clients is just using like the TAP annuity to cover the healthcare costs. So let's say you got all of your expenses for the most part taken care of, but you're like, hey, I don't, that healthcare sucks. I don't want to pay $1,500, $1,800 per month. And that's just a big hit. I got to keep working longer. And then I always step back and like, what if we put just enough in the TAP annuity to generate that $1,500 per month right now? That way, your healthcare is taken care of from a guaranteed source. That gets that off of there. Then all you have to do is worry about your pension, Social Security covering your other bills and your investments covering your other bills. The healthcare is taken care of from that TAP annuity. TAP annuity goes up by 3% per year. So over time, it's going to keep going up. It should help keep up with the costs of that type of healthcare. So it's just one planning tool or idea we've been throwing around that clients love. We've been putting it in place for people. Even people that have enough for investments to cover it all, they like the idea of just having a guaranteed income source to take care of this bill, and it's one less thing they have to worry about or stress about in retirement. Next solution is just take a long look at your long-term care plan. Whether you plan on doing the insurance route, the hybrid route, family route, whatever it is, take a long hard look at it to see is it financially possible or if the family's gonna be on board or not. Now, risk number 4, we're gonna go over inflation. This one's been a hot topic the past 2 years, especially with all the tariffs coming up and talk of it's gonna trigger inflation. And we've seen egg prices. I know a grocery outlet here, the 5 dozen egg prices hit almost $30 for 5 dozen. So we definitely have seen the impact the past few years. I remember that with your cost of living adjustment for Washington State, they cap it at 3%, right? So if we have inflation at 5%, 6% going on and on, that 3% isn't going to cut it, which is why it's important to have other savings. So while it is nice to have pensions and the TAP annuity and stuff, those cost of living adjustments at 3% may not keep up with inflation if they have those big spikes. In 2022, inflation hit 8.3%. It would take you almost 3 years of that cost of living adjustment to catch up for just that 1 year inflation spike. So having extra savings is super, super important. I had someone come into our office recently that they wanted to turn all their money into guaranteed income. They wanted to use all of their Plan 3 money into the TAP annuity, or they wanted to use all of their deferred comp or 403Bs to buy service credit, to buy the TERS annuity, to buy the PERS annuity. They didn't want anything to do with the market because they didn't like the way it worked. And while they would have had a nice guaranteed income stream, those things, again, inflation on those, they're going to be capped at 3%. They got no other liquid funds. So if any type of big emergency happened, they need extra money from, inflation started going out of control, they kind of shot themselves in the foot because they had too much money locked up that was illiquid. So in dealing with inflation, you need to have liquid assets. You need to have it tied to something that's going to grow more than the inflation is going to grow at. The best tool to use to offset inflation is the stock market. The stock market will typically outpace the inflation spikes. So remember that when things inflate, right, prices go up. The companies in the S&P 500 that you're investing in, they're the ones increasing the prices. So they're the ones that have usually increase in profits, and those profits will reflect in terms of dividends and their share or then their stock price. So if you own part of them, you can help offset some of that inflation that you're paying in the store by owning the stock. Other tools you could be using if you don't want to go on the stock market route, real estate's typically been really good for that. TIPS, which is Treasury inflation protected I-bonds, which is a bond that's tied to inflation. So whatever they decide the inflation rate is at, these things paid closer to like 9% in 2022 when inflation was peaking up. Other ways to address this is just to keep reviewing your expenses annually, start trimming unnecessary costs. Those subscriptions will slowly add up because they always want to do these little price increases, and what you thought was costing you $30 a month soon becomes $50 a month. You're like, hey, I didn't buy anything else. It's just because every subscription or service starts to increase their prices, and when it's only $1 or $2 each year, but it starts to compound itself, it can really get out of control. So I've had a lot of people that make $200,000 to $300,000 per year, but if you look at their budget, they're spending an absurd amount. They're spending pretty much all of their income because they have the lifestyle inflation, and trying to have those guys retire, it's a really tough task because they are so used to their lifestyle. They don't want to cut back on anything. They want to cancel their cable or cancel their vacations or reduce stuff. And those people have a really tough time going into retirement, especially early retirement, because unless they've done a great job of saving, their spending habits are going to follow them in there, and they run the big risk of running out of money because they can't control their spending. They're after the luxury life, and their finances just don't support it anymore. All right, so risk number 5 here is the legislative risk. So Washington legislators regularly will review bills that affect pension plans. plans. So the past few years, we've seen a few of these changes, such as making Plan 2 the default pension option. We've seen the retirement age change from 62 at 30 years to 65 at 30 years for people hired after May of 2013. So these things will change over time. So that's just one of the recent examples, but it's important to keep an eye and look at these things. If we run into budget problems, they always could start reducing benefits. If they say, hey, we can't afford to pay 2% of Plan 3, they could theoretically reduce it. Instead of paying 1%, they could drop it to 0.8% or 0.75. Now, once you've carried collecting it, they're going to have a hard time changing that. But for future generations, it could be possible. So the same way the current bill is pending to increase it, they could also reduce it. These things also affect things like the TAP annuity and how they pay, that they can affect, what the COLA is. So if that 3% guaranteed COLA, it starts costing the state too much money, they could potentially reduce it for future generations down to 2.5% or 2%. So keep an eye on legislative risk and how they affect you is an important part. Now, beyond the Washington scope of thing, legislative at the federal level, that affects things like taxes and other retirement rules. So like we had the RMD rule change. We've had tax rules change as far as percentage we pay, how much we can write off, what our standard deductions are, things like that. Those things are always changing. So another thing you want to be keeping an eye on, because all legislation has to do is change taxes by 10%, and it could easily cost you $10,000 to $20,000 more per year. You can have a decrease in spending power, and if you're on a real tight budget, that's going to reflect, and you're going to see the impacts of that, which is why tax planning is an important part of the whole retirement concept. In short, just make sure you're keeping tabs on the news in general, what tax laws do, what Washington state laws are doing, and how that impacts you. So keep tabs on it, advocate or join unions, but most of all, just stay informed. So you can see retirement isn't all about saving money, it's just about protecting it. And the 5 risks we covered, longevity, market volatility, healthcare costs, inflation, and legislation, are very real, but with the right strategies, you can manage or even mitigate them. So if this video helped you out, make sure to share it with a colleague of yours. You feel free to join our free school group. We've got almost 100 members now in the community. This is a place I've built just for Washington State employees to go in, chat, ask questions, ask for help with things, and we're all here to support each other. So that's free in the link below. The group is called School, so feel free to join for that. And until next time, remember that your future depends on what you do today.